Are you at all familiar with the Great Reset?
I've seen some of that, and I don't want to get too conspiratorial about
Right,
it,
yeah.
but I will say that it seems like big business has really been the main beneficiary of the pandemic. It's small
Yeah.
businesses that are collapsing and falling apart, but Amazon is doing great, Walmart is doing great, and their competitors are all being rolled away. And if you look at Andrew Cuomo's plans for New York City, where I live, in the aftermath of the pandemic, it seems like Silicon Valley is going to, be running the city as well. A lot of
Hmm.
the cameras in the city and contact tracing, and it seems like we're going to be living under a Silicon Valley regime here in New York City. A lot of New York City small business owners are very angry. The New York City Police Department is very angry. It appears they seem to be for Trump, while the elected government seems to be critical of the NYPD, and it is certainly for the Democrats. And this is a crisis of all of society.
Yeah. Yeah, so just like for the people who don't know what it is, I just want to explain it real quick for them. And we're not at all trying to get in any conspiratorial realms here, but many rich nations have suffered economic turmoil after the pandemic. And again, I'm not pushing any conspiracy theories here about the virus being manufactured, but I think we can agree that it certainly is being taken advantage of by rich elites to push their agendas. So the Great Reset is not a conspiracy theory either. It is something that was talked about and supported openly on the World Economic Forum by Klaus Schwab, the executive chairman of the forum. Time magazine, which is owned by Mark Benioff, had the Great Reset on their front cover of the November 2020 issue of Time magazine. Benioff is also a co-founder of Breakthrough Energy with Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jeff Bezos. The Great Reset was also discussed and supported by England's Prince Charles, Antonio Guterres, who is the Secretary General of the UN, Kristalina Georgina, who is the Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and other officials associated with Microsoft, credit card companies, and BP. So the Great Reset is about Klaus Schwab's release plan for how to overcome several economic and environmental crises that our world is currently facing. He provided details about his plan in an article on the Globe and Mail. And the three main components of the Great Reset agenda includes number one, fair market outcomes; number two, investment in equality and sustainability; and number three, harnessing the innovations of the fourth industrial revolution. Now, the fourth industrial revolution includes omnipresent internet surveillance, which includes virtual reality and powered by 5G technology. This includes nanotechnology for physiological tracking, digital and trackable IDs, social mappings, and online social credit scores. Again, this is what he discussed. This is not anybody theorizing something. And as far as quality and sustainability, Schwab wants to increase deep sea mining in the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans, and increase mineral mining in Africa. And in order to power artificial intelligence and 5G, these corporations are going to need a lot of minerals. And something I've often said in this show is that capitalism is tied to imperialism and overexploitation of natural resources. The problems with capitalism have certainly been exacerbated and highlighted in the recent months, but the solution that is proposed by the elites appears to be more technocracy, globalism, and authoritarianism. The Great Reset is a global revolution for capitalism, and I know you've heard that phrase before, Caleb. You spoke before about a book by Marilyn Ferguson that's titled The Aquarian Conspiracy, Personal and Social Transformation in the 1980s. Could you tell us more about the significance of this book, how this ties into a potential Harris administration, and do you see this at all related to the Great Reset that Klaus Schwab and these other elites keep talking about?
Sure. Well, Marilyn Ferguson is, she claimed to be like a psychic medium. She was an occultist, and she advised a lot of Democrats, right? She was an advisor to Ted Turner, the cable giant who started CNN. She was a spiritual advisor to Al Gore. She actually was invited to the White House during the 1990s to do psychic stuff at the White House. And she's a strange occult figure who became popular over the course of the 1970s. However, what needs to be discussed is her ties to the intelligence community, right? In her book, The Aquarian Conspiracy, in which she lays out her worldview, it's a manifesto, basically. She names a number of think tanks that are involved with her efforts and share her perspective, and they include the Stanford Research Institute, which is a very important CIA-linked research institution in California. She talks also about, some other foundations. I think one's called like the Center for Democratic Studies or something like that. And it's been revealed that she and others were actually contracted by the CIA in their research of psychics and things like that. But what's important is that at the same time that Silicon Valley, or I'm sorry, at the same time that that Marilyn Ferguson was rising in influence and becoming popular among CIA-linked people, like Carl Rogers Carl Rogers was a psychologist who, started out working with the CIA and their brainwashing research, and then became kind of the most prominent, psychologist in the United States. Buckminster Fuller, others, at the same time that Marilyn Ferguson is becoming kind of the ideological guru for all the CIA-linked intellectuals and academics and politicians. At that same time, they're setting up Silicon Valley, right? This is the late 70s, early 80s, and it's really because of money from the NSA and money from the CIA and money from the intelligence agencies that Silicon Valley became the center of the computer revolution. Right? It was not the free market that created Silicon Valley, right? This is a myth that we are constant hear. Oh, Steve Jobs was just tinkering around in his garage and he was creative and he had this idea and the free market made it happen. That's not true, right? That there was a strategic decision made by America's intelligence agencies. Go back to the 60s. Zbigniew Brzezinski, the Cold War strategist, wrote a book about the role of computers potentially, and it was discovered that the Soviets did not have anywhere near the amount of resources to invest in their computer field. And they were very advanced in computers. They developed their own computer system in the 80s, home computer system. They were very advanced in computers, but they didn't have the resources to keep up with the United States. And because of that, a strategic decision was made by the U.S. government and its intelligence wing to start, pouring money into IBM and Apple and what eventually became Google and what eventually became the internet. And, Al Gore is quoted as saying, "We invented the internet." What he meant was the U.S. government made strategic decisions to give money to people, to develop the tech sector. That's what that was really referring to. And because of that, right, Silicon Valley, California, you talk about Palo Alto, California, places like that, they became the center of the computer revolution. And that's at the same time that Marilyn Ferguson is writing, and is considered the spiritual guru of all of this. And if you read her writings, she does talk about, what she might call a great reset. I mean, she doesn't use those words, but she's talking about this great, spiritual awakening that's going to spread all over the planet. It's not pro-communist. It's not anti-communist. It's just about awakening mankind. Right. It's going to reduce the human population. It's going to reduce consumption. And we're going to come into balance with Mother Nature. And we're going to go back to pre-Christian values. She feels like monotheism and Christianity and Islam and Judaism are like distortions. There's these natural faiths. We're going to go back to the pagan ways that existed. And we're going to be in balance with Mother Nature. And it's quite disturbing if you read it. It's written in a very upbeat, positive tone. But if you actually read the content of what she's writing, she's calling for a fomenting of global chaos and instability in order to just kind of reset the planet. So I can see what you're getting at it and how they might be related.